one of my goals this year was definitely to tap more in with the producer side of things, to educate both myself and the gang. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like this, my whole channel has been a learning experience. Like I get educated constantly, whether it's like about just the cultures, whether it's about the specific scenes or artist backgrounds. So I thought one of the cool things that I could do for the gang is have an Alpha Ojini takes us to class session, where I can ask you some specific questions about terminology that I think a lot of people don't understand, and then have somebody who's qualified to answer them, and then we could just clip this whole part of its own thing to be a video. And I think a lot of people would benefit from it.
Let's go.
All right, cool. So what do you? I don't have a good segment name. We'll just call Alpha Genie teaches the gang. Let's go. Let's start like real basic stuff. All right. So when you say that I'm a sound engineer and a producer, I think a majority of people think that those words are just synonyms and mean exactly the same thing. What's the difference between a sound engineer and a producer?
Okay, so I'll do you one better. So under the term producer, under the umbrella term producer, there's actually two different things. So in the context of music in 2023, there are people who are not fully producers. They just do a part. And there are people who are record producers. So to explain that better, I would say, let's look at Quincy Jones, for example, the famous producer for Michael Jackson. Someone like that who can play instruments and who can direct other people to also play to fulfill his vision. Those are the fully formed producers. Someone that can take an idea that was in an artist's head and then create a music bed to fulfill that idea is a producer. Now, how they get there is what differentiates them. So someone like DJ Khaled, for instance, who can make a beat to save his life. Like, he has tried that shit on social media a lot of times, and they have just ended up being a meme every single time. So, but for someone like him, he keeps making these albums that have gone on to have like chart-topping success and everything, and he's credited as producer. So what does he do? He has an idea. He wants this grand-sounding record. He wants something that has this Jamaican feel. He wants to put, Buju Banton on it. He wants to put, but he doesn't know how to get there. But he knows somebody that can play reggae dub bass, that can give you that bounce. He knows a reggae drummer. He knows a fucking reggae keyboardist. He puts all of them together in the studio, and then he directs that shit till it becomes a masterpiece. That's a producer. That's someone like Diddy.
So producer is like a director on a movie scene.
Exactly. Someone that can bring a bunch of people together to achieve a musical idea. That's what a producer is essentially. So now that gives you the sub-genre of producers that we have today. People that, because they don't have access to multi-instrumentalists, they can actually program sounds on their computers, like using a DAW, which is called that's a digital audio workstation. Stuff like Fruity Loops, Cubase, Logic. Some of these programs have like stock sounds built in, or you can import your own sounds, guitars, bass sounds, drums, all that stuff. So if you don't know how to use multi-instrumentalists to like achieve your vision, but you can actually sit down, like program sounds by yourself to make a song, you are a producer, but you are probably not on the same level as someone who can play an instrument. It doesn't mean that you are any less. You are making music. That person is making music. You are both producers, but then they are like, there's a separation. You understand? So someone like Scott Storch now, he's fantastic with the keys, but in a session, he probably needs someone who can program drums that fit very well with those keys he's playing. So most times you see he has co-production credits. It's very rarely that you see like Scott Storch has like the full production credits on a song. Like if you really go and check liner notes, I'm not just saying like Spotify credits alone. So a producer's job is to take a musical idea and then make sure that, it's actually something you can listen to, like from the idea to the finish point, like the finishing, like having an MP3 file that someone can listen to. A producer's job is to make that idea come to pass. So whatever needs to be done, if he needs to make the artist record while running around in circles around the mic, he directs that. If he has to make the drummer drum, and then maybe for mic the drums in a different way, all those things, like as I said, there are levels. So someone who is making beats in his room somewhere can call himself a producer because he created all the sounds. Not he created the sounds, like he put all those sounds together to make a beat. But then someone who is also in some fucking bigger studio in Vienna, Austria, assembling a bunch of violinists and saxophonists and then getting them to like achieve a vision is also a producer. Would that guy win a Grammy? Maybe. Would the guy in the bedroom win a Grammy? Maybe. But that's the distinction. So record producers,
So let me
how, like,
give you
the number of hats that they wear.
Let me give an analogy. Make sure we got this for the gang. So producer would be like the term athlete, and then underneath athlete, there's a difference between a basketball athlete and a football athlete. They're both athletes, but they specialize in two different things. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Kind of, but okay. So I think the point I was just trying to make was that most times people just say because someone made a beat, he's a producer. Like, I was just trying to get the distinction. Like, some people, like in 2023 now, a lot of the hip hop that comes out is people that just program beats on Fruity Loops. Like, they know how to use the step sequencer, program beats, add melodies, add effects, and all that shit. Like, that's fantastic. Like, that's how a lot of us came up. Like, that's how a lot of us make beats, even to this day. So there's nothing wrong with that. Some of the biggest, bangers in history have been made that way. But there are some other people too who like the song, like who see the song to the some people just make beats and then they send batches of beats to artists, for them to pick and choose which one they're going to record on. And then those songs end up making it, on an album, and then they call the beat maker or producer back, and it's like, oh shit, you got a placement on like this Young Jeezy album, and they're like, okay, cool. How the song went from being a beat on their laptop to a Young Jeezy song, they probably do not know. You understand? They just made a beat that was the underlying musical bed for, like, it could be for anybody, or it could be for a group of niche artists, like the guys that make Young Jeezy type beats on YouTube, right, or like J. Cole type beats. They're just making it to serve a particular audience. So I'm just saying that there's that. I'm not trying to say that producer can be one thing. I was just trying to like show how the term producer has changed over the years. Like, whereas I used Quincy Jones in my first example, because back then it used to be someone who the artist will sit down and be like, okay, I want a massive string section here. The producer will get the string section. The producer will get, the instrumentalist and shit, but it has changed a bit. So today, those people from before are still here, but today we now have a new crop of people who are just doing this shit on their laptops, who are just programming stuff mostly digitally. If we can get into a conversation about which one is better or which one is more natural, or that's a different.
I just want to define the terms for the gang,
Exactly. So that's just it. I don't know if I've even confused everybody by my long-winded explanation, but I feel like as a producer myself, I don't like when, if I could have just said it's someone that makes beats, like I could have just said that to make it very simple. Like,
I think you painted a good picture, I think.
But I don't like to just like leave it like that, because some people get the wrong idea. Like, some people think that's all there is. Like, the guys that make beats on Fruity Loops, some of them, they actually think that's all there is. There's this breakdown that Genius used to do on YouTube called Deconstructed, where they used to take people's favorite songs and invite the producer into a studio to break down the beats. So there's one they did for the baby's producer. There's one what's his name again? Oh Lord, Jetson made it. Has that tag. Oh Lord, Jetson made another one. So they asked him to break down, I think it was Shug, the beat for the baby Shug. And then obviously it was very simple, like just like 6 layers in FL Studio. Just the kick, the 808 going boom, 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 boom. Then the melody tam 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 tam. Bro, it's simple as fuck. Like, anybody could do that, but you could also argue the same thing about like Soulja Boy doing it on Crank That. And then, but these songs are massive. So can you now say Jetson is not a producer? It's hard for you to say that, because what he did is relatively easy. You understand? But there's somebody out there too, like fucking Ludwig Göransson, producing soundtracks for like Black Panther, and like being super musical, or like Phineas, Billie Eilish's brother,
orchestras.
doing all that. So at the end of the day, I'm just trying to say that producer you can wear multiple hats, or you can just wear one hat. So I mean, but sound engineer, that one now is a very, very distinct. Like, sound engineer, it's either you're a live sound engineer or you're a studio audio engineer. So live sound engineers, those are the guys that are on stage making sure that live performances sound the way that they're supposed to sound. They're also called front of house engineers, FOH. But the guys that we are focusing on, I guess, are guys like me who are in the studio trying to polish up a finished recording. So when the producer has finished producing and the artist has finished recording, and then everything has been committed to quote unquote tape, like when everything has been fully recorded, then that gets sent to the audio engineer. The audio engineer now sits down and figures out, in this genre of music, the kick is usually this loud. In this genre of music, the 808 usually slaps like this. In this genre of music, the hi-hat is supposed to be below the vocals. In this genre of music, the guitar is supposed to be on the left-hand side, or the keyboard is supposed to be on the right-hand side. So they bring their technical knowledge of what works in that genre to the song, and then they now speak with the artist. Is there any other special thing that you wanted to do? Is there any vision you were trying to achieve? Did you want to sound like some fucking guy talking from like 2039, or did you want to sound like someone's grandfather? Imagine you were Kendrick Lamar's engineer now. Like, the conversations will be different. After you bring your technical knowledge, Kendrick is going to tell you that he wants this thing to sound like a fucking ghost from time past or some shit. So you now know what buttons to push to make somebody that says he wants to sound like a ghost. So all they do is they paint the picture for you, and then you know what technical buttons to press to like take it there. So if someone tells me they want to sound like they are singing in a fucking church, I know I'm supposed to add a reverb to that shit and then mess with the time and pre-delay and decay and all that shit to make it sound the way he wants it to sound. If he says he wants to sound like T-Pain, and I have to slap a bunch of auto-tune on that shit. Like, so that's where you and the visionary, being maybe the artist or the artist and the producer, sit down and then try to take the song from the recorded product to the finished product, adding effects, balancing, fucking cutting stuff that you don't really need, adding stuff that is required. And then when you finish, you pass that to the mastering engineer, who now makes sure that for that genre of song, you don't have to now turn your volume up when they are trying to listen to your own, or turn the volume down when your own comes in. Like, he makes sure that your song meets like the industry requirements. Not requirements, because there's no requirements for this shit, it's art, but over time there has become like certain standards. Like, for instance,
that's what I was gonna say. It's the standard.
That's also like there are loudness levels and all that shit that you have to meet. So, but these days mixing engineers do both. Like, they mix and they master a lot of times. It's only in advanced place like in the US.
We're gonna get to that next.
Okay.
No, I'm saying like the terms mix and mastering. Like that's gonna be the next thing.
I was just saying that you have people that are dedicated to like just being machine engineers. But you can go ahead since we're getting there anyway, because there are other things that have even cropped up now.
So
like with Dolby
there's a bunch of shit. You just got. I'm gonna have you break down like all the terminology, like 808, snare, kick, like. I guarantee people don't know that stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you're using those words to describe this, but I guarantee they don't know that either. You know what I mean?
That's crazy. Okay, so when you listen to a song, most times when you listen to a song, you just know the song is nice, you enjoy it, but most people can't even tell the instruments apart. So I feel what you're saying. Most people that are here are hip hop fans, so it's even good. So you can use hip hop songs. All hip hop songs have a lot in common. Like, most hip hop songs that people like, they have kicks. Those things that go like the kicks, like the main things that drive the backbone of the rhythm section of the song. The 808s are those things that are like, they are bass heavy. The things that make your fucking speaker like rattle, like boom, all those long sustained basses that you hear in most hip hop songs. Those are basses. Now, the 808s that we use in regular like connotation every day, the 808 is actually the name of a drum machine. Like, it's a Roland TR-808. That was like the name of the drum machine. It was created back in the day when there was a wave of drum machines being created. The thing about it is that was one of the bass sounds that actually came from that machine. So it became synonymous with the TR-808. So that's why people till today still call that bass sound the 808. It's not necessarily because there's any crazy number thing that's happening there. You understand? It's a type of bass. In fact, the crazy thing is not only bass sounds that come from that machine. There are 808 snares. Snares are like, if you've ever watched a marching band, like those people that the all those things that people play, the marching band guys, what directs like the marching and shit, those are snare drums. But when you make beats, there are variations in all these sounds. Like, you can do something to a kick now and it sounds slightly different. Like, if I take a kick now and I maybe remove some high frequencies from the kick, it can sound more muffled. If I remove some low frequencies from it, it can sound lighter. All those things are kind of what producers have to think about. But kicks, 808s, snares, claps, all those things are instruments, within beats, you know, that kind of make them what they are. You know, now the producer just has to figure out how to sequence them, what the tempo is, how fast the song is going to be, you know, what pockets the artist is going to flow in is going to be dictated by how the beat sounds. You know, different genres of music have different bounces. You know, like drill, everybody is accustomed to drill songs having this kind of bang, 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 boom, boom, wah, 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 all that rubbish. And this, why am I calling it rubbish? It's like all that. It's like, how will I put it? That's what you hear when you hear drill. When you hear amapiano, for instance, like, you know, the log drum is coming. You know, all those things. All those things are kind of like what becomes synonymous with a particular genre. But it's kind of like like the log drum now is a type of bass, you know, but it sounds the way it sounds because it has been tuned a certain way, and that has become the staple of the genre. The same way, if you hear a banging 808, you know you're listening to a hip hop song. You can take something from our piano and bring it to hip hop. You can take something from hip hop and take it to our piano. There's no rules to this shit, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, there are some things that just define a genre. So yeah, I was actually turning on something. I could actually play some sounds if I needed to do that to like drive home a point. But I don't know. I think
I think you
at
did a
this
great
point,
job.
Right. I
That
hope
was that
so.
was fantastic, dog. This is one of my favorite segments we've ever done. All right, so I often talk in my reactions, right? I use the term music theory a lot, and
Oh
music
yeah.
theory
You say that a lot.
in
I've heard that a lot in reactions to my shit.
yeah. So like music theory, I tend to tell the gang that it basically breaks down to, does the song sound right to you? Does it sound good? Right? Does it sound, or is it choppy? Does it sound like something's like missed out of place? What it really comes down to is like, music theory is separate into written music theory, which I don't touch at all because that's not what we do, right? I can't read music.
Yeah.
And then like audio music theory, which is basically rhythm, melody, and harmony.
Yeah.
So
What goes well together? Things that work well together.
go if you can explain to the gang the difference between rhythm, a melody, and a harmony.
So rhythm mostly is like when you think about a song, what makes you actually move is the rhythm. Like what actually makes you get up of your seat or nod your head or like dance to it is rhythm. Now rhythm is kind of like mostly for hip hop, mostly rhythm is from the drums. The rhythm section of most hip hop songs is from the drums. Now are there some innovative songs that get their rhythm section from somewhere else? Yes, but for most hip hop songs, the fact that when you hear when you hear Run This Town, you know, by Jay-Z and Rihanna and co, that's boom. By default, you're nodding your head because that's what the rhythm of the song is like. That's what drives you. You understand? Now, in that same thing I'm doing now, that's the rhythm. If you remove the drums and you just hear that's the melody. That's what sticks with you. That's the thing that you take away from the song, even if you don't remember the words. Like, even some parts of the lyrics can even form rhythm. Like Jay-Z does that a lot. He would lean on the beat to create another rhythm. Like Jay-Z going, "We are, yeah, I said that we are. You can rock nation. You can call them leader." Like that shit is rhythm itself. Like the best rap songs or the best songs, you know, in general, are the songs that take the rhythm section of the instrumental and then either lean on it to like accentuate the rhythm or like find pockets in between to like build on that rhythm. Like when Central C does something like on what they call this song, this one he did with Dave Sprinter. The song is just your regular drill beat to bang bang down down, but the way he flows in between. Madam, your name is same, but they're gonna say when the birth certificate and immediate. That is rhythm. He's leaning on the beat to create another rhythm. When you hear those two things together, it's unmistakable. You have to move your head. So I think that's one of the things that musicians try to achieve. That's why sometimes Afro beats, they don't really spend too much time like crafting lyrics. Afro beats is usually mostly based on vibe. That's why onomatopoeia is heavy in Afro beats. It's like the beat is dope, but what the artist brings to the track. Rema is doing all those things. He's borrowing, like he's not borrowing, like he's adding to the rhythm, he's accentuating it. So the thing that makes you move is rhythm. Then if you remove the drums, remove maybe the vocals. What are you hearing? What's the underlying bed of music? You know, the thing that you remember, that's the melody. So stuff like Scotch Touch. You remember it, that's the melody of the song. No drums, no vocals, but you remember that. You remember pam 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 pam. Like if they remove Make It Rain vocals, if they remove the drums, that thing that you are hearing is the melody. That's what sticks to you. You understand? And Scott Storch has said it so many times that anytime he was making a beat, he needed to make the melody like as memorable as possible, you know. So, but drums usually creates the rhythm section. Drums and bass, sorry, like they create groove and rhythm. The things that make you move, like those are the things that physically make your speakers extrude. Like the things that you see when you see your speakers physically moving, those are the things that generate like rhythm, because it's like sound, it's physical sound, you know, pushing, and then you dance to that. It hits you, you move, you know. So there's rhythm, melody, and then, you know, whatever else is on top.
Harmony. So how would you describe a harmony?
Oh, harmony is like two different, like, so harmony is like at its base, harmony is like two or three musical notes that like work together. So if you have like a chord, you have like tan tan tan, those are three separate like sounds that when you play them together, they make a beautiful like new sound. That beautiful new sound is a harmony. That's at its most basic, you know, level. A chord is like the basic level of harmony. Then when you now take it into when you are singing or when you are like playing something else on those chords, like you have a chord going under, like, and then someone is singing, and then, you know, layering their voices, or like when you hear a choir, that's the best way I can explain harmony. Like the way different parts of a choir like come together to like, they sound like it's one thing, but you know that it's multiple things that are layered on top of each other. You know, that's mostly harmony, like two different musical parts, two or more musical parts coming together to like form one new sound that just sounds beautiful to your ears. You know, that's harmony.
Yo, bringing the gang this segment might be the best contribution I've ever had, is bringing you to this channel to go over this. This is going to save somebody's life in a conversation one day.
Right, it's true, because people use some of these words wrongly. Like sometimes they interchange them like wrongly. Yes.
Can you explain the term counting bars?
Bro, so I think the best way to explain this is that if you don't want to get too technical, let's just make some assumptions. So let's just assume that everything is like counted in even numbers. So the best way to do this is for every beat that someone is approaching and trying to count bars, I think the most basic level is that there's 4 beats in one bar. So for anybody that is trying to count, you know, bars and they don't know where to start from, when you are listening to a beat, let me just fuck. So it's like there's something called the metronome, without trying to confuse people further, but it's something that kind of tells someone how fast or slow a song is. So I'm just going to do that metronome manually now. So the metronome is supposed to be like a click track. So it goes count, 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 count. So when you hear that over a period of time, you can tell how fast or slow a song is. So if you're counting bars, the first 4, count, 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 that's the bar. Count, 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 that's the bar. So now that is just for like the basic explanation. Now, if the song is slower, obviously that can drag out. If the song is faster, you can even combine that. So it just depends, because when you come to tempo now, there are some songs where if it's a fast drill song now, on some DAWs, you will see that the song is maybe 140 BPM. But to some people, it's also half that, 70 BPM. So it depends. Someone like Eminem, he can cram like in that space where I did 1, 2, 3, 4 and call it one bar. If someone writes something to fill up that space, that is supposedly one bar of lyrics. But like someone that raps fast can say something that is 2 bars worth in that same space, you know, and then cram more information into it. But like, I don't know, that's the best way that I can explain it. Like if you're counting,
I think that was fantastic. That was fantastic.
I mean, like if you're just counting from the basic like level of using tempo and metronome, 4 beats is 1 bar. The reason why I use 4 is because that's where everybody starts. By the time you start making beats in like triplets and like start doing things in multiples of 3. That's a different conversation altogether. So in order to not confuse anyone, let's just 4 beats to a bar. It helps you understand when you want to pivot to like other things.
Okay. You use the term BPM, right? And BPMs have actually changed.
Oh, beats per minute. Beats per minute. So I keep forgetting. For everything I say, I need to explain. Okay, beats per minute is like, it's the way you have like units for measuring things, the way you have like liters or like kilograms for measuring weight, or liters for measuring volume. So the speed of a song or the tempo of a song is measured in beats per minute. So the way I did that, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are 4 beats, and that is 1 bar. But if you counted how many beats I could do in a minute, that's what will tell you how fast that song is. So if I can cram 100 of these counts into 1 minute, obviously the song is faster than if I could only do 50 of those in a minute. You understand? So that's why that's used to like specify the tempo of the song. So that's what BPM is.
And are there industry standard BPMs for different genres?
Oh yeah, there are ranges. So you can do anything within that range, and instinctively anybody listening to the music will be able to tell, oh shit, this probably in this genre. So something like drill now, for instance, drill is usually faster and up tempo. So drill, you can find drill songs from anywhere between 125, 130 to as fast as 150 beats per minute. Like it just goes bang, 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 bang. Like it's very like fast paced and like up tempo. Then you find like something like boom bap tracks. You can find them within that 80, 85 BPM range. There's like boom, 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 like all that shit. Like it's slower. And then for stuff like Amapiano, it's like between like 105, 120, or the gung 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 gung, all that shit. Like so, all those genres they go with ranges of BPMs that kind of, before the listener even knows which artist is on it or whatever, their brain is already settled in, okay, this is probably going to be an Amapiano joint. That's why when you fuse something, like when you do a fusion, that's one of the things that first grabs the brain. It's like, last time I checked, something in this fucking range of BPM should belong to this genre. Why am I hearing something different? So I think that's the first thing that actually catches people when you try a fusion. Like when Burna Boy tries to do something like Last Last, it's an Afrobeat song, but he slowed it down to the tempo of like a Dark Child joint, with the chopsticks beats. Without you go bow for the result, nothing to discuss. So I think that's like 88 or so. So it's in the slower range. So you won't expect that from an Afrobeat song, but that's the thing that first catches you because it's a Burna Boy song. So where is he going with this? And then you now begin to put the pieces together in your brain. So there's no rules to this shit, but those are just like the ranges where some genres lie. So, pick and choose. I would just go with what feels good, because sometimes as producers, you start with a BPM and you're making a beat, and then along the line, it feels like it's too sluggish, then you crank it up. Or sometimes it feels like it's too fast and you slow it down. So usually at the end of the day, it's about feeling. It's just after a long while of different people making these songs via feeling, we have now come to see that most of the songs in these genres lie within these ranges. So that's what kind of gave everybody their idea of like, okay, if you want to make this song, put it within this range and all that shit.
Perfect, dude. You're incredible. This is the big one. This is a pet peeve of mine too. You mentioned it earlier. You mentioned it earlier, actually. So, thanks to the legendary T-Pain, most people think every form of pitch correction is just auto-tune, right? So could you explain the difference between pitch correction, delay, reverb, like terminology that they could use instead of calling everything auto-tune?
Bro, like I think to even buttress your points, there's this conversation I saw. So when Burna Boy did Madison Square Garden, that performance was incredible. And then as an audio engineer, like listening to his vocals on the mic that day, I could tell that they were running through an effects chain. Like I could tell, like there's nothing, like it's just standard. Anybody who mixes music could tell, because he's a big artist. He's at that level. His performance, he cannot fuck up. He's at a point where his team can't even let him fuck up. So he's not even allowed to just sing raw like that. Anything can happen. So the level to which his voice is altered now is kind of like what makes the difference. So I was in my mind, I was like, do these people not know that every single live performance that is what it sorts these days is someone's vocals running through an effect chain? Is it that these people don't know, or they just want to build this thing in their mind that their goat does not require effects? I'm like, bro, if we're not in the 1940s or 50s, everybody requires some kind of studio magic, you know, for their vocals to sound polished and finished on record. So I say that to say that that's the misconception a lot of people have, because, you know, it doesn't mean that the person cannot sing. Like, it's just quality control. That's what it is. You understand? Someone having a little bit of auto-tune in the chain to make sure that he does not go flat, or someone having a little bit of reverb. So to explain the concept now, auto-tune is a type of pitch correction. So pitch correction is the umbrella term. So what pitch correction is when you sing, you are singing musical notes. So if I sing, I have a dream, a song to sing, I can play that shit on the piano as maybe do, la, so, re, or mi, re, mi, fa, or some shit like that. So all that translates to musical notes. Now, there are 12 keys in the musical scale, like regular Western musical scale. If someone meant to sing maybe a do, re, mi, if someone meant to sing a mi note, and because they are human, they make a mistake, and instead of singing the mi, they sing something that is flat. When I say flat, you are not hitting that particular note the way it's supposed to be. Let's say you meant to sing ah, but then you sing ah by mistake. Auto pitch correction means it's going to take that ah that you sang and try to move it to where it was supposed to be. So it's first going to transcribe the things you sang into musical notes, and then try to manually move the notes that are falling short into the position that they are supposed to be. So if you imagine someone's voice going through a keyboard, it's going to make sure that all the notes coming from the person's mouth land perfectly on all the keys where they're supposed to land on the keyboard. So now that is pitch correction, the manual movement of somebody's notes from a flat position to where it's supposed to be. Auto-tune does that automatically, hence the auto in the name. So it's like it automatically tunes somebody's voice while the person is singing. That's for the live ones. And for the studio versions, they do it after the fact. So when someone has recorded, you load auto-tune on the person's vocals, you set it to the key of the song, and then because every key in music has certain notes that work within that key, it's going to find the best possible notes that the person was trying to hit but fell flat, and it's going to try and put it there automatically. So that's what auto-tune does. Now, the strength of it is what makes someone either sound like a chipmunk or just sound like they needed a little bit of help. So if you crank it to the maximum, obviously, you're going to sound like Cher on Do You Believe in Love, or like every T-Pain song ever, you know, but some people just need it there as like a safety measure. Everybody uses auto-tune. From all your faves, Beyonce, oh, everybody, Rihanna, everybody uses auto-tune. So it's no longer a conversation about, even Usher and T-Pain, they kind of got to an understanding in 2022 about the way Usher used to look at T-Pain back in the day as someone who was basically stealing, you know, his success because he didn't really know how to sing. It's been proven that the guy can sing, but that was a stylistic choice that he made at some point in his career. The guy can sing for
He can
days.
sing
You
his
understand? So at
ass
the end of
off,
the day,
dog.
that's what, bro. Like, and he has a very unique like voice texture. Sounds like he's going to go off at some point. Sounds like his voice is on the very brink, and that shit is crazy to me. And he keeps going. Like every single time I've heard him perform live, I'm like, what the fuck is going on here, dog? So, like, that's auto-tune. And I mean, autotune is basically, I could speak for days on autotune, because the guy who even created the actual software, like, he didn't even know that shit was going to be as big as it is. Like, this guy was a fucking geologist or something. Like, this idea of autotune just came from him trying to figure out a software to kind of send sound waves down into the earth to figure out at what depth, you know, there were rocks or like petroleum or whatever. And then that algorithm is kind of like the basis for autotune. So he was doing that shit, and then at a dinner party, he was having a conversation with, I think, his wife or somebody, and they were like, those waves that are coming back up, that's because it's kind of like based on the frequency that you are hearing, you know, the property of whatever is under. Like, if you are hearing something with a lower pitch or lower register, you know what, maybe it's more like heavy, I don't know what the fuck, maybe heavy rocks or like sedimentary rocks or whatever the fuck was happening there. But someone now joked about using it on the human voice, like the way those things were shifting in pitch. Like, what if you could actually like shift the pitch of people's voices as they sang? And it was a joke, but this guy like went to work with it, and then it just was a project. Ended up falling in the hands of some top studio guy. And I think for the story about, if you watch that T-Pain documentary on autotune that they did on Netflix at some point, These guys were holding this thing like an industry secret for years. Like these guys held it to their chest, like, you know, they had a secret that would make people always stay on key, and they didn't reveal it for years. It was until Cher used it. I think, who was the first person? Someone used it before Cher, but I think it was Cher that brought it to the mainstream when she used it on that Do You Believe in Love After Love? When she used it on that song, and everybody knew that this was not someone's real voice. They now started trying to figure out what this was. And then that's how this shit became. Till now, Autotune is still the most expensive pitch correction software on the market. Like so many, now that the algorithm is out there and people can figure out the math to it, there's a lot of pitch correction software, but Autotune, the original Autotune made by Antares, is like the most expensive to date. Like a yearly subscription to that shit is like $300. If you want to buy it outright, it's like 500 and something, depending on the type you want to buy. So the guy is rich now. The guy that actually created the algorithm, he got like a lifetime Grammy award last year or so for his contribution to music or some shit like that.
I didn't know any of that. That you just educated me on.
Sorry,
all that.
I went off on a tangent there.
No, like look, if you look at the beginning of this interview and the way that you've become comfortable and like more like excited about what you're talking about, it's infectious. You're making me fucking excited about this shit, dog.
Sorry, like I'm a geek with stuff like this. Like that's how I am with stuff like this. Sorry.
No, this is literally one of my favorite things that's ever happened on the channel.
Oh man, like thank you, man.
What is explain? So like every artist has like I guess a different variation of it, but explain the concept of an effect chain.
Okay, so an effect chain is something that consists. Okay, so obviously effect chain. So it's a chain of effects, things that you actually add to accentuate or take away, you know, from your performance. So let's say you are someone who has like a very massive baritone, like your voice is super deep. Let's use Ghost for example. So every time I mix a ghost verse, like I think to myself, like not many people will know what to do with this guy's voice, because he does not have your regular everyday voice that if you go and watch YouTube and they say, so this is the preset chain that was used for Drake, you can't slap that on a ghost vocal, it will not work. So an effects chain is something that is tailored to someone based on the properties of their voice that kind of makes them sound better. That's the best way to put it in the context of 2023. Every artist kind of like has, so now let's say you have a baritone, like I was trying to say. That's okay, so let me first start like this. There's a range of sounds that the human ear can pick up. The best way, there's no other way to put this part I'm about to say now in layman's terms, but sound frequency like is measured in hertz, and frequency is kind of like how many cycles a sound can make per second. So if a room can vibrate, if a room is vibrating 60 times per second, that room is vibrating at 60 hertz, and that usually comes with a sound. So there are sounds for every single frequency that human beings can hear, and the range that we are able to hear with our ears is between 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. You can't hear anything above 20,000 hertz, but dogs can. So it's like human beings have a range. So within that range, all we do as mix engineers, if you are coming down to the brass tacks, is manipulating that frequency range, making certain things live in certain spaces within that range so that someone can have the full listening experience across that spectrum. So things like hi-hats that are very bright and brittle, like they live on the higher end of the spectrum. Things like basses and 808s and like kicks that have more thump and chest, they live on the lower end of the spectrum. Things like vocals that have like just a mix between low and bright shit, they live in the middle. That's called the mid-range. So now that whole thing now of trying to remove what does not work for somebody, you know, and then add what works for somebody. That's the whole game that we are playing. That's the whole dance that we are doing as mix engineers. For someone like Ghost now, he might have, like everybody, as this thing I'm saying now, if we put it on a spectrum graph, there are parts of my voice that are living in that lower register, but because I don't have as much baritone as Ghost, there's not a lot happening in that register. There's stuff happening there, but it's like really low. Most of my shit will be in the middle. If I were a girl with a really high-pitched soprano, most of my stuff will be on the higher end. So for someone like Ghost now, the first thing you might want to do for him now is to remove some parts of that very low, baritone that does not take away from you knowing it's a Ghost voice, but would clash with like a kick on the same song or like an 808 on the same song that needs to live there, that cannot live somewhere else. You understand? So for someone like Ghost now, putting something like that uses what is called an equalizer, because it's an equalizer. That's the tool that you use to carve out spaces in the spectrum. So putting that, probably putting a compressor, something that can clamp down when he goes too high and bring up the parts where he's speaking too low. That is something again in the chain. So we're already building a chain. There was the equalizer, there's the compressor. Then going from there to maybe something like a reverb so that it will emulate him being in a space, like to give his voice some definition. When you sing in your bathroom, that echo that you hear is not necessarily echo. It's like many echoes put together, and that's what's called reverb. A reverb is just many tiny echoes that are multiplied together, in the same space. So what people do in reverb plugins is they try to emulate the sound of various spaces in real life. That's a type of reverb. I can't go into that. It's called convolution reverb, but that's like a different thing altogether. But like reverb is many tiny echoes. When you go to a very large place and you shout, Steve, and after a while you hear Steve, 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 Steve. Those are echoes. And that's what we have called delay. That's what delay is. So delay is kind of like feedback you get after you send an initial signal out and then you hear it come back to you. When it happens many times over a period of time and it becomes a whole mess, that's when it's reverb. So it's like multiple echoes, but like a single echo is like one tap, tap like that. And that's what we call delay. So if you have different, like an EQ, a compressor, maybe a delay plugin to like give his reverb, his voice some kind of maybe, so when he says something like, you got me feeling alive, 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 alive. All those things that's a delay effect. You are putting it there for spice. You are putting it there so that people can just have a good listening experience when they hear that thing. So the chain can consist of things that you put there because they are an absolute necessity and things that you put there as like spice. So an effects chain is just a group of things that help the vocal go from raw to polished, basically.
And does it change the effect based on the order of the effect chain of what goes first?
Yes, it does. It does. Putting an EQ before a compressor or compressor before EQ is one of the biggest debates ever in mixing engineering land. It's like people try to figure out which should go first, but every single time the answer is always do what you need to do first. Like, what's the first thing that you need to control? So if someone is a dynamic singer, what I mean by that is that you can never tell when they are going to go, and you don't know. Like, if someone is that kind of person, then it will pay you to probably have a compressor first on the chain, because that's going to catch whenever they go up unexpectedly. You understand? So it's just on a case-by-case basis. And then that compressor is also going to help them when they go soft, soft, soft. It's going to bring up those parts a bit, depending on your settings, and then from there, when everything is now at a fairly balanced level, you can now begin to use EQ to clean up the parts that you really don't think should make it to the final song. And then from there, you can begin to add effects. Now, what you do after that is just based on the song and what you're trying to achieve, but the order matters. Because if I had put an EQ there first, I probably will not hear the softer parts. I probably will not hear what needs to be taken away there because they are too soft. But using a compressor first to bring them up and bring the higher parts down, so everything is pretty even, will allow me hear what needs to be taken away with the EQ. So the order matters, and it's just based on the problem you are trying to solve, really.
You're absolutely incredible. You are watching a master at work. Last two. Explain. I think everybody knows the term mixing and mastering, but I think 99% of people have no idea what it means or the difference between the two. So if you can give me your best explanation of the difference between mixing and mastering and what they mean.
Okay, so like I said before, the artist and the producer have an idea and they have created a song. So the song exists. But now what exists is like the raw version. It's in its rawest version. So if a guitarist has come and he has played, all the noise from the amp he used is on the record. If the artist has recorded, all the breath in between, all the let's go again, all the people eating in the background, all that shit is there in the recording. The person who played the keys has made a couple of mistakes. Maybe that has been edited out or not. So the music exists in its raw form, then it is passed to the mix engineer. So the mix engineer now what his job is in like, to put it in simple terms, is to start solving problems, basically. Like, take away all the imperfections on the record. So let's say on a kick, for instance, if the kick is not hitting the way it's supposed to hit, it's the mix engineer's job to say, oh shit, this is a hip hop song. The kick is supposed to hit more than this. Why is it not hitting? It's not hitting me in my chest. Where's the chest frequency? I'll pull up my EQ. Maybe the chest frequency is in the lower register, like we said before. I go up there and I boost some chest, and then all of a sudden the kick is hitting more now. I go to the vocals. The vocals, they are screaming at a particular point. I compress, or I EQ, or I use some other kind of dynamic leveling mechanism or whatever. I do all my shit. Me now going through all the elements of the song and trying to make all of them fit together in the context of the final track is what mixing is. So there's no rules to it, but there are some techniques. Like I said, there are standards. Like, I cannot just put out a song that is super low volume, because by the time they play the next song, they're going to ask, why was yours super low? When they play yours, they're going to have to crank the volume. Then when it gets to the next person, they're going to have to turn their volume down. I'll speak more on that when I get to the mastering engineer. But for mixing, it's basically taking all the elements of a song. I'm not saying that when the producer finishes the song, that the elements don't coexist as a track. You get where the song is going, but it's still raw. So you need to go in there as a mix engineer. You polish, you clean up, you cut out fucking breaths, you remove all the problem, or you edit. Editing is like removing breaths, removing all those things that don't work for the song, that don't serve the song. Then the actual effects process is you going and saying, okay, this piano is clashing with this guitar. Would it be nice if I move the guitar to the left and move the piano to the right, so two of them can coexist within this stereo space, but still work together with the vocal in the middle? So I control the panning, which is moving things in the stereo field. Moving things in the stereo field is called panning. So moving things towards the left or the right, or putting things more forward or moving them to the back, that's panning. So I control the panning, I control effects, making sure that maybe someone that is supposed to sound like they're up front and in your face, I don't use that much reverb. If I want someone to sink in the back and sound like their vocals are more lush and they're in a space, I use a lot of reverb. So I want someone to sound like there are multiple repetitions of what they're saying, I use delay. So that's where my knowledge of what button does kind of contributes to how the song sounds at the end of the day. So if someone says they want their shit to sound like they're screaming and they're fucking angry, they might not know what button to push, but I might know that using a distortion pedal on that vocal might make it sound grungy, like he was in a rock band or something. So it's just applying that technical know-how to paint the picture, whatever picture the artist and producer were trying to, So after I've done that, the song now exists in its final form. But then someone else has to now take that final song, put a candle, like I put a lens to it, like in context to other songs in that same genre, and then just answer a few questions. Is it as loud as other songs in this genre? Will it stand up commercially if two of them are played back to back? Like, is it as clear as other songs in this genre? Like, are there some final things that need to be done to make sure that it adapts to like the standards? So a mastering engineer, sometimes they don't even need to do much. Sometimes they do a lot. Sometimes they don't do anything at all. But, most mastering engineers are just there to make sure that most of them, where they earn their keep is mostly like in the context of an album. So if an artist is working like on 10 songs and then all of them were produced and mixed by different people, someone is supposed to make sure that all of them work together in the context of one project. So the mastering engineer is going to sit down and pick maybe one song as the anchor and then try and work every other thing to sound like that one, so that your experience is cohesive from top to bottom. You understand? So if that means maybe going to one song and increasing the bass there because the next song coming has so much bass that it will be so out of place, or reducing the bass on the first one for contrast, so that going from the first one to the next one will hit you like a sucker punch. It's just, that's where the mastering engineer comes in, to make sure that the final product is as cohesive as possible for the end listener and does not create an experience where your own falls flat next to another song in the same genre. So yeah.
Let's go. That was incredible, my guy. Wow. All right, look, we're back. I had to pause the whole record. I want you to know this was not planned. All right. I didn't know he was gonna do that. I literally just sprung that on him because he was using terms that I knew, but I knew that I was like, I fight with people all the time for saying the wrong shit. And I ended up getting a master class. That was absolutely incredible. And there's two things that need to go on record that I told him as soon as we paused this. Is one, this is easily my favorite interview that I've ever done. I've never experienced something like that in person. With how concise he explained it, the way he broke it down in layman's stuff, the fact he could make the noises, like y'all got a whole beatboxing presentation out of this. Like that was incredible, my guy. The second thing is I'm going to clip that and post it every day for the rest of my life. Like that is going to be the single greatest contribution that my channel has given the culture ever, is having all of that information explained. Like that was, you should put a DVD out of that and just sell it. Like, bro,
hey, yo, man,
I'm
thank you
baffled.
So much, man. Thank you. I was just, trying to answer a bunch of questions. I'm happy that, this is the reaction. I really didn't even, I was just answering questions.
You weren't just, bro, you were having the time of your life.